out! Both of you! You don't belong here!
At my husband's funeral, my mother-in-law slapped my 7-year-old son and called him a mistake. Then she pointed at the door and said, "Get out, both of you. You don't belong here." I stood there holding my crying child, while the entire room watched in silence. No one said a word, but I didn't beg, I didn't argue. I just made one call. It's time. 2 hours later, they were begging me. The sky over Chicago hung low and gray, like it was pressing down on everyone gathered in black. I stood beside the grave, fingers wrapped tightly around my son's small hand. My body felt hollow, like I had been emptied out overnight. My name didn't matter right now. All that mattered was that I had just lost my husband. Daniel Carter was 34 years old, tall, about 6'2", with a lean, athletic build and dark brown hair he never bothered to style. He had a calm, steady presence, the kind that made people trust him instantly. He smiled easily, but only with people he truly cared about. Years ago, he had built his business from nothing, and that struggle shaped him, made him protective, careful, especially with family. With me, he was gentle. With our son, he was everything. "Mom," I looked down. Liam, my 7-year-old, he stared up at me with wide blue eyes, his father's eyes, small, thin, always a little shy around strangers. He clutched my hand like if he let go, he might disappear too. "Why are they putting Dad in the ground?" he whispered. My throat tightened. "He's resting, baby." Liam frowned, confused. "When will he wake up?" I couldn't answer. I was Emily Carter, 29, a night shift nurse who hadn't slept properly in days. My uniform still sat crumpled in my car. I was used to saving lives, but I couldn't save his. A few steps away stood Margaret Carter, my mother-in-law, mid-50s, perfectly dressed, sharp features, cold eyes that never softened around me. Next to her, Richard Carter, my father-in-law, tall, rigid, always composed, his silence heavier than words. They didn't look at me. They never really had. Then I noticed someone else. Mark Reynolds, early 30s, slightly rugged, unshaven, wearing a black coat that didn't quite fit. Daniel's closest friend. Loyal, quiet, observant. He met my eyes for a second, then looked away. Something about that look felt off, like he knew something I didn't. The drive from the cemetery to the Carter mansion was silent, suffocating. Rain began to fall lightly against the car windows, blurring the city into gray streaks. I sat in the back seat beside Liam, my hands still wrapped around his fingers cold and trembling. No one spoke. Not Margaret, not Richard, not even the driver. When the gates of the Carter estate slowly opened, the mansion stood ahead of us, massive, polished, and lifeless. It wasn't a home, it never had been. It was a symbol, power, status, control. I stepped out of the car, heels sinking slightly into the wet gravel. My black dress clung to me, damp from the mist. I was average height, slim from years of long shifts and skipped meals, my dark hair tied back loosely. People often said I looked fragile, but they didn't know how much I had endured to survive. Inside, the air felt colder than outside. The marble floors echoed with every step. Guests had already gathered in the living room, dressed in black, whispering behind polite smiles. Their eyes followed me, judging, measuring. "Try not to embarrass the family," a voice muttered. I turned. Victoria Carter, Daniel's older sister, early 30s, tall, perfectly styled blonde hair, sharp makeup, dressed in designer black that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Her posture screamed superiority. Her lips curved into a faint, mocking smile. "You've already done enough damage," she added softly, "just for me." I said nothing. Liam squeezed my hand tighter. As we moved deeper into the house, something caught my attention. I glanced toward the hallway ceiling. The security cameras, dark, off. A strange chill ran down my spine. This house had always been heavily monitored. Daniel insisted on it himself, so why now? Which were they turned off? "Mom," Liam whispered. I followed his gaze. At the end of the hallway was a door. Daniel's office, locked. The handle didn't move when Liam gently touched it. He looked up at me, confused. "Why is Dad's room closed?" Before I could answer, Richard's voice cut in coldly from behind us. "That room is no longer your concern." I slowly turned. His expression was unreadable, but something wasn't right. The living room felt suffocating. Conversations resumed in low whispers. Glasses clinked softly. But beneath it all was something tense, something waiting. I stood near the center of the room, one hand resting protectively on Liam's shoulder. My instincts, sharpened from years in the hospital, told me something was wrong. Not just emotionally, something deeper, something hidden. Liam slowly stepped away from me. "Liam," I called gently, but he was already walking toward the memorial table. At the center of it stood a large framed photograph of Daniel. He was smiling in it, relaxed, alive, everything he no longer was. Fresh white lilies surrounded the frame. Liam reached up with both hands and carefully picked it up. "Dad," he whispered, his small voice trembling. My chest tightened. "Be careful," I said softly, taking a step forward. But it happened too fast. His fingers slipped. Crash. The glass shattered across the marble floor, the sound cutting through the room like a blade. Conversations stopped instantly. Every head turned. Liam froze. I'm sorry," he stammered, his voice barely audible, his eyes wide with fear. And then, slap. The sound echoed louder than the glass breaking. Liam's face snapped to the side, his small body stumbling back. For a second, everything went silent, completely silent. Margaret stood over him, her hand still raised. Her expression wasn't grief, it wasn't pain, it was anger. "How dare you?" she snapped, her voice sharp and cold. "You ruin everything you touch." I rushed forward instantly, dropping to my knees and pulling Liam into my arms. His body shook violently as he cried into my chest. "He's just a child," I said, my voice breaking but rising. "Like, what is wrong with you?" Before Margaret could answer, another voice cut in. "Ma'am, please." A woman stepped forward, thin, early 40s, wearing a simple black uniform. Her name tag read Clara, a housemaid. Her brown hair was tied back tightly, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to intervene. "It was an accident." Margaret turned sharply. "You're fired," she said flatly. Clara froze. Get out now." The woman hesitated, glancing at me, then at Liam. Her eyes filled with quiet sympathy. But she said nothing more. She turned and walked away. No one stopped her. I looked up. Mark stood near the doorway, hands clenched at his sides, his jaw tightened, his eyes locked on Margaret. He looked like he wanted to step in, but he didn't. Why? That's when it hit me. This wasn't just cruelty. This was control, and everyone here was either part of it or afraid of it. I held Liam tighter, my heart pounding, not just with anger anymore, but with suspicion. Something was very, very wrong in this house. The room didn't move after the slap. It shifted, like something ugly had finally surfaced and no one felt the need to hide it anymore. I was still on my knees, holding Liam close, his small body trembling against mine. His cheek was red, his breath uneven. My hands trained to stay steady in emergencies were shaking. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered into my dress, his voice breaking. That broke something inside me. "No, baby, no," I murmured, brushing his hair gently, forcing calm into my voice. "You did nothing wrong." "Oh, please," Victoria's voice cut through, sharp and amused. I slowly stood, still holding Liam's hand, and turned. Victoria Carter stepped forward with effortless confidence, heels clicking against marble. She folded her arms, tilting her head slightly as if studying something beneath her. "Dee, this is exactly what Daniel was trying to avoid," and she said, "Chaos, embarrassment, you." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" She smirked. "You didn't know? Of course you didn't. He argued with us. A lot, especially near the end." Her eyes flicked toward Margaret, then back to me. He finally realized what a mistake he made. My breath caught. That wasn't true. Was it? A memory surfaced. Suddenly Daniel's last phone call. His voice had been tense, lower than usual. "If anything happens, take care of Liam. And don't trust..." The line had cut off before he could finish. At the time I thought it was stress. Now, it felt like a warning. "You trapped him," Margaret said coldly, stepping forward. "A nurse with nothing. You saw money and married into it." Each word landed harder than the last. "I loved your son," I said quietly, my voice trembling but firm. Richard let out a dry laugh. "Love doesn't build empires." The room filled with low murmurs, guests whispering, watching, judging. No one defended me, not one person. "You and that child," Victoria continued, glancing down at Liam with open disdain, are nothing but a burden. Liam tightened his grip on me. I felt it, the shift. The final line being crossed. Margaret pointed toward the door. Pack your things, leave this house. Silence. I looked around slowly, every face, every pair of eyes that watched me fall apart, and something inside me stopped hurting. The silence after Margaret's words wasn't empty. It was expectant. They were waiting for me to break, to cry, to beg, but I didn't. I slowly straightened my back, wiping the last trace of tears from my face. Years of working in emergency rooms had taught me one thing: panic helps no one, not even yourself. I reached down and gently squeezed Liam's hand. He looked up at me, still shaken, but something in my calm seemed to steady him. "It's okay," I whispered. Then I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out my phone. My fingers didn't hesitate. I dialed a number I had memorized but never thought I would use. The line rang once, twice. "Hello?" A composed male voice answered. "It's Emily Carter," I said quietly. I paused, glancing up at the faces around me, confused, irritated, watching. Then I said the only words that mattered. "Oz, it's time." I hung up before he could respond. Murmurs spread instantly across the room. "Who did you call?" Victoria asked, narrowing her eyes. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because at that moment, I already knew something they didn't. I wasn't powerless. As the tension thickened, I felt a presence step closer behind me. "Mark, don't react," he muttered under his breath, his voice low, controlled. I didn't turn, but I felt something slip into my hand, small, cold, a USB drive. "Daniel trusted you," he added quietly before stepping back as if nothing had happened. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression still. Minutes later, I found a quiet corner near the hallway and slipped the USB into my phone using a small adapter I always carried for work files. A series of emails appeared. My breath caught. Financial reports, transfers, hidden accounts, names, dates. The Carter family name appeared again and again. Large sums of money, missing, redirected, stolen. This wasn't just family cruelty. This was corruption, and Daniel, he knew. A sudden movement outside the front windows caught my attention. Flashing lights. Red and blue reflecting faintly against the marble walls. Guests began whispering louder now, some stepping toward the windows. "What's going on?" someone asked. I slowly lifted my gaze. Police cars, not many but enough. Enough to make people nervous. Enough to make the powerful uncomfortable. I closed my hand tightly around the USB. For the first time since the funeral began, I wasn't afraid anymore. The flashing lights outside hadn't disappeared, but they hadn't entered either. They just stayed there, like a warning. Inside, the room was unraveling. Whispers grew louder, guests shifting uneasily, eyes darting between the doors and the Carter family. Then the front doors opened. 2 men stepped in. The first was in his late 40s, tall, neatly dressed in a charcoal suit, silver hair combed back, calm and precise in every movement. Jonathan Pierce, Daniel's personal attorney. The second man followed quietly behind him, younger, carrying a leather briefcase, observant but silent. Pierce didn't greet anyone. His eyes scanned the room once before settling on me. "Mrs. Carter," he said with a slight nod. His voice was controlled, professional. "We need to proceed." Margaret stepped forward immediately. "Whatever this is..." "Oh, it can wait." Pierce didn't even look at her. "It cannot." That single sentence shifted the entire room. He placed the briefcase on the table, opened it, and pulled out a thick file. "Papers, sealed documents, legal weight. I am here to execute the final will and testament of Daniel Carter," he announced. Silence, complete silence. Richard's confidence cracked just slightly. "We already handled the estate," he said, but there was hesitation now. Pierce's expression didn't change. "No, you didn't." He opened the document. "All assets, corporate holdings, real estate, financial accounts have been legally transferred to Liam Carter." A ripple went through the room. I felt Liam's hand tighten in mine. Pierce continued, "Mrs. Emily Carter is designated as sole legal guardian and executor of these assets until the child reaches legal age." "That's impossible," Victoria snapped, stepping forward, her composure breaking. "There must be a mistake." "There is not," Pierce replied calmly. My heart was pounding, but my face remained still, because now, everything made sense. The USB, the warning. Daniel's voice in that final call. I took a step forward. He knew, I said quietly. All eyes turned to me. He knew what you were doing. I lifted the USB slightly. The stolen funds, the hidden accounts, the lies. Margaret's face paled. Richard didn't speak. For the first time, they looked uncertain. Behind me, Mark stepped forward. His voice was steady now. I helped him gather everything, he said. All eyes shifted again. He didn't trust any of you. The words landed hard. No one interrupted him. And his death. Mark paused briefly, jaw tightening. It wasn't as simple as you think. The accident report doesn't match the financial timeline. A chill moved through the room. No one spoke. No one dared, because the truth was no longer hidden. It was standing right in front of them. The silence didn't last long. It shattered. No, this is manipulation! Victoria's voice rose first, sharp but unsteady. She stepped forward, her confidence cracking, perfectly styled hair slightly out of place now. This is her doing. She planned this. Her finger pointed straight at me, but her hand was trembling. I didn't move. I didn't need to, because for the first time they weren't looking at me with power. They were looking at me with fear. Enough, Richard said, but his voice lacked the authority it once carried. His tall frame seemed smaller now, shoulders tense, eyes darting toward the windows where red and blue lights still flickered faintly. A knock echoed from the front door, not loud, but final. The second man with Jonathan Pierce moved to open it. 2 officers stepped inside. One of them, a broad-shouldered man in his early 40s with a calm but firm expression, Detective Harris, scanned the room carefully. Beside him stood a younger officer, quiet, observant. We're here regarding financial irregularities connected to Carter Industries, Harris said, his tone measured but undeniable. The shift was immediate. Margaret took a step back. For the first time, her posture broke. Her face, once rigid with control, now showed something real, fear. This is absurd, she whispered, but her voice shook. Victoria turned quickly. It wasn't me, she snapped, panic rising. Mom handled the accounts. You did this. Margaret's head snapped toward her. Watch your mouth. No. Victoria shot back, her voice cracking. You told me it was under control. The room descended into chaos, accusations, overlapping voices, desperation spilling out in every direction. Guests began backing away, distancing themselves from the family they once admired. I stood still in the center of it all, holding Liam's hand. And he looked up at me, confused but no longer crying. I knelt slightly, brushing his hair back. It's okay, I whispered. Then I stood again. Mrs. Carter, Jonathan Pierce said calmly, turning to me, the property is legally under your authority now. I nodded once. Slowly, I looked at Margaret, then Richard, then Victoria. The same people who had just minutes ago thrown us out like we were nothing. Now they stood there, cornered. Please, Margaret said suddenly, her voice low, almost broken. She took a step toward me. We were upset. We didn't mean... I raised my hand slightly. She stopped. My voice, when it came, was quiet, but final. Leave. No anger, no shouting, just one word. Richard opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Victoria looked away. Margaret stood frozen, and for the first time in their lives, they had no power left. The house felt different without them. Not quieter, just lighter. The same marble floors, the same tall windows, the same walls, but the weight was gone. Sunlight finally reached places that always felt cold before. I stood in the living room one morning, barefoot, holding a cup of coffee I actually had time to drink. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't rushing, I wasn't bracing for impact. I was breathing. I had always been a survivor. Years of night shifts, emergencies, loss had shaped me into someone who endured. But now, I wasn't just surviving, I was rebuilding. Liam ran across the room, his laughter soft but real. The fear that once lived in his eyes had begun to fade. He was still small for his age, still quiet around strangers, but stronger now in ways that couldn't be seen. He slept through the night again. He smiled more. Mom, look, he called, holding up a drawing 3 stick figures holding hands. I smiled, kneeling beside him. That's us? He nodded proudly. And Dad's watching. My chest tightened, but this time it didn't hurt the same way. Yeah, I said softly. He is. Weeks later, the Carter name began to disappear from headlines, not as power, but as scandal. Investigations continued, but I didn't follow them closely. I didn't need to. My focus was here, on what mattered. With Jonathan Pierce's guidance, I made decisions carefully, learning the business Daniel left behind piece by piece. I didn't try to become him. I became myself, someone who protected, who built differently. That's when the idea came. The Daniel Carter Foundation. A small beginning at first, focused on supporting children in unstable homes, kids like Liam could have been, kids who needed protection before the world hardened them. Mark helped me set it up. He showed up often, not as a hero, not as someone seeking anything but steady, reliable. Early 30s, still rough around the edges, but honest in a way that didn't need words. Over time, he became part of our rhythm. Not replacing anything, just there. One evening, as the sun set through the tall windows, I sat beside Liam on the couch. He leaned against me, calm, safe. I looked around the house, not as a place I feared, but as a home I had claimed, for him, for us. I wasn't afraid anymore. And for the first time since everything ended, I allowed myself to believe something new was beginning. Sometimes God allows pain to reveal the truth and protect you from the wrong people. What feels like the end may actually be His way of giving you a new beginning. If you are going through a hard time, remember God sees everything, and justice will come at the right moment. If you believe in that, comment amen. Share this story to give someone strength today. And subscribe for more stories that remind you that you are never alone. May God bless you and protect your family always.